some great links from our panelists for you to download post session. So without further ado, very quick introductions. Rob Lewis, I'm chairing this event, one of the co-founding directors of Mission Performance Limited. We're a professional services business. We focus on changing behaviors to improve business performance. We help people to lead, to coach, to communicate and minimize risk in these uncertain times. We deliver locally, globally, and now virtually. And we've assembled a fantastic set of panelists for you. And with no means, we will start with Chris. Would you like to do a brief introduction, Chris? Not there. Let's go with Emma.
Hello, good morning. So my name is Emma Louise Monroe Wilson, but most people just call me Em, and I run a marketing agency called imari.co.uk. I come from a background in oil and gas, so I started in UK retail for BP, where I had industry-beating results in declining markets. Then I moved into strategy transformation in Europe, and then finally into running global social media for BP. And then I left and went to a tech startup and took them through a successful investment round before starting my own business. So hopefully I've got a lot of different experiences which will help with any questions that you've got. And yeah, I'm here to answer all of your marketing questions and how you can use tactics more effectively to market during crisis. And that's me.
Great. Thank you, Emma. Chris?
Hi, I'm the employment training manager for Radiant Housing, and we assist residents and people living in communities into employment training, and we run a big program.
Chris, I think you've got a slight issue with your audio. It cracked. Ask Bob to give you a hand with that. Yeah. Okay, Caroline, over to you. I think you're on mute, Caroline.
Hi everyone, my name's Caroline Collins. I'm the CEO of Salient Business Academy. We've run this for now 20 years. Before that, I started life in corporates with shipping, and I was the FD of a rather large shipping company. Over the last 20 years, I think with Salient Business Academy, what I can say is that we've had to diversify to survive, and also increase our products and services. Our main purpose is to help our customers improve their performance either as an individual, as a workforce, or with their productivity and profitability.
Thank you, Caroline. Over to you, Hugh.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Hugh Chapman. A little bit of my background. I did 30 years with an American corporation, 9 years as UK MD. We employed about 2,000 people in the UK. After leaving them, I had 3 years running my own business, and for the last 2.5 years, I've been the CEO at a training organisation in Portsmouth called Peter. Our business is split into 2 parts. We do commercial training, which are soft skills and compliance training, health and safety, and the other half is managing apprenticeship schemes.
Great, thank you, Hugh. Steve?
Which Steve? Steve Jones or?
Steve J. Go, Steve.
Okay, so yeah, Steve Jones here, a company called Skills for Business Training Limited. My background was health and fitness management, so I was with Fitness First PLC when we started with one club on the South Coast. I left when we were the largest in the world. We did that in 7 years, went through the AIM, the full listing. I left in about, so we were opening a club a week at 1.2 worldwide, so I experienced fast growth and all its nightmares and all its glories. I left, did 3 years with a coaching organisation called Shearlaws that specialise in SME growth. And my business now looks at performance management of organisations and companies, but also making sure that you keep your talent as you grow, because that's one of the pinch points I see in organisations. They can't grow because they can't attract or keep their talent. So that's where I put my focus now, business growth and talent.
Thank you, Steve. Steve A.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Steve Outram. I'm the head of marine operations at Hobber Travel. where I operate as both a hovercraft captain and also as heading up the marine operations team, where we manage the business in terms of safety compliance and the performance management of the business from a marine point of view. I started with Hover Travel back in 1988, following an initial career in the Merchant Navy. I'm qualified as in the marine world as a master, and I also hold a commercial flying qualification, so I've operated within the commercial aviation sector as well. I did escape from Hover Travel for about 8 years in the early 2000s and flew commercially for a number of years, so I've got some expertise in the marine and the aviation sectors, but also very much in the management of the problem that we're all facing at the moment, where our businesses have changed dramatically as a result of COVID, and Hover Travel has shared the pain that everybody else has shared recently, and we've come up with some fairly innovative changes to our services, certainly from a business corporate compliance with UK regulations. That's been very much at the forefront, so I can speak at first hand of some of the challenges that we've faced and what we're doing about them. So that's me.
Thank you, Steve. Thomas?
Hi everyone, my name's Tom Lloyd. I am the Vice Principal at Portsmouth College with a remit for apprenticeships, adult education, global engagement and new business development. So we've obviously had a range of challenges as a college that hopefully I'll be able to sort of give some insight into how we've adapted as a large organisation and as the sort of the college for the city when it comes to training. And I also run a small sports coaching consultancy, which is a social enterprise as well. So I can sort of give some insight from a small SME and how we've had to adapt in the current climate.
Great, thank you, Thomas. So this second session talks about growing a business, the requisite commitment, the variety of skills that you need in order to do that, how you make that transformation in a period of huge change. So the panel represent the marketing, the finance, the business planning, the strategy, and a whole raft of other disciplines that we need to transform and grow our business or start new businesses in these uncertain times. This broad perspective, I think I'm going to turn to you, Thomas, to give us a broad perspective on the subject at hand. And then I'm going to turn to each of the panelists to give a little bit of a specialist insight into an area that Tom gives us the summary of. So Thomas, over to you, sir.
Yeah, sure. So I think when thinking about a broad perspective and certainly what I've learned from this process that we've gone through is the absolutely critical thing, especially during a period of crisis, is adaptability. And as Rob says, you're going to hear lots of different insights into specialist areas. But I think for me, the thing that underpins all of that through this period of change has to be adaptability. And I think, you can go back to Darwin, who said that species that learn to adapt are the ones that survive and thrive whilst others die. And I think that's been no different in business really from that side, as you need to adapt to be able to meet your customers' needs, and that really underpins the decision-making process. So I think for you guys that are either have started your businesses and are now finding yourself in that position or looking at setting up a new business, I think the question you really need to ask yourself is, what if? I think it's, what if my product or service has stopped becoming relevant? What if my customers' needs have changed? What if one of my revenue streams suddenly dries up because it's seen as a nice to have by an organisation? And what if my customers suddenly have less time or things need to be more convenient for them? And I mean, nobody knew that the what if this year was going to be, what if there's a global pandemic? But that's where we find ourselves now, really. And that's really where an adaptable mindset and business model really is critical to be successful from that side. But the exciting bit really from that is that it means you get to become innovative. Becoming innovative becomes more relevant and prevalent and becomes really, really important. And that you strive to understand your customers' needs through innovation. And that's the bit that I've really enjoyed as somebody who's an ideas-based person, is that I've seen it as an opportunity really to be really creative and really assess how relevant is what we're doing. And there are three key components or takeaways that I would say about that are important to becoming an adaptable organisation. First one is understanding your core purpose and mission. So just reminding yourself about what you're doing, so you don't find yourself moving into strategic drift as you scramble to try and capture new market share or realize how you're going to change. So really understanding your core purpose and mission and going back to that first. And then the second point is constantly evaluating what problem you are solving for your customers. And that changes, and that's changing consistently now more than ever. So whilst you're sticking with what your core purpose and mission is first, then really start to think about, how do I need to adapt to solve the new problems that my customers are finding? And then the third point is having a range of products or services that can be switched on and off to address points 1 and 2. And I think to give you some examples of how we've done that, I think firstly, as a college, our core purpose is to meet the training needs of the city. You know, it's a very simple one. It's a big one, but it's a very simple one. The problem that we needed to solve very quickly as part of the pandemic was that the economic impact meant that straight away, no companies were taking on apprenticeships, which is a big part of our provision. And the second part really is that our global educational visits immediately probably had £400,000 worth of summer programme visits that couldn't happen. But the one thing people did have all of a sudden was time. And so the way that we dealt with that was, although global, the taps of apprenticeships and global were switched off for a period of time, we then flipped it to our online provision because we knew that people had time and they had wanted to upskill. So in point 3, around turning on the different taps, we then sold, I think, 650 online courses in about 10 days, which was a really successful model. And I think to talk about it from a small business perspective very quickly and finish off with that is with Soccer Scholar Academy, which is a social enterprise I run. Our core purpose is to develop coaches, players, people, academics and professionals through football. Football couldn't then happen as point 2 from that side. So there was a big chance of disengagement and parents really want to get their kids back active as possible. So what we did from that perspective was we created some digital talent challenges and did a pay it forward crowdfunding campaign, which we raised £5,000 in about 3 weeks. Now, the lesson that I really learned from that was that it's okay to be human and it's okay to be vulnerable. And actually our members appreciated where we were as a small organisation that needed their support, and they were quite happy to pay it forward. And that worked really well. So to summarise, understand your core purpose to be adaptable, consistently evaluate the problems that you can help people solve, and build your services so you can turn the taps on and off as and when needed to suit.
Fantastic, Thomas. I think that all of those 3 things resonate. Your point about accessing funding, the Pay It Forward campaign, there's lots of grants available for new businesses, existing businesses that you can tap into. It'd be great if you could send some of those links or stick them on chat as we go through to let people know where they can access all of that funding. So thank you, Thomas. Caroline, can I turn to you next? Caroline, you're on mute.
Let's do that again. I think over the 20 years, we've had many ups and downs. Obviously, recessions were one of those that we've had to climb through. And each time, I would say we don't just do a business plan at the beginning of business. You do a business plan and you review that business plan, because although you have an option to change the way you're going about things, or maybe your product or your service, you have an end in sight. I mean, Stephen Covey said, always start with the end in sight, and I totally believe that. So during the pandemic, I think lots of people felt out of control. I know I did myself. I'm a bit of a control freak. And one thing that we identified is you can't control what you can't control, but you can control the things around you. There are certain specific things that if you focus on that you can control, brings back you into the center and your business as well. So if you're starting a business and you just started off just before the pandemic, I should imagine incredible challenges, and existing businesses, as we've heard from Thomas, massive challenges too. But what you have to do is focus, or what we found we had to do is focus on what we can do with our customers, what control we can do, and what plans we can put in place. And planning, to me, is the most important and effective way to move yourself forward out of free falling. So same questions you ask yourself, I think, when you first start is, why are we doing this and what are we trying to do? Those are, key questions for anyone at any stage in business. And, how did we get here? Other than obviously we know a pandemic, but, where do we want to go next? And what can we do about it? And as Thomas mentioned about innovation, you with the right people around you and a forum like this, you ask the questions, and together, collectively, you'll get more answers. So I always say, first of all, understand where you are, control what you are trying to achieve, but control what is in your control to allow you to focus on moving forward. And then I would definitely use, we have a product which is out there, it's not exclusive to us, many business coaches use it, which is called the Business Model Canvas. And that's a great, it's a great piece of work for any business, whether you're starting up on your own or whether you're already existing or whether you want to change directions. And that allows you to look at your key partners. It allows you to look at your suppliers, your cost, your staff, if you have staff, and see if they, and by looking at those and writing them all down in front of you, and and I'll share that canvas with you guys. I will happily send that through, and you can plot your own after this session. But it's a great way visually to see where you currently are and what you can change and affect. So I'm more than happy to share that. So again, I don't want to take up everyone else's time here, but I would start to look at, in order to get your strategy ready, look at your key activities. What do you want to change? Look at your key resources, your values and propositions, where your relationship management is at the moment, your channels of distribution. So again, we've done pretty much the same as everyone else. We did executive training. Most of our executive training was face-to-face, and now it's virtual. We've always had an online presence. We've always had an online system, and a bit like Thomas, we brought that out to the fold, and that became more of a core of our products and services. When we've seen a number of redundancies, we have an outplacement service. So over the years, over 20 years, we had one product to start with, and that's diversified so much. So every time there's a new challenge, we've sat down as a collective and identified what solutions we need to bring forward. So again, at the same time, we've got the online learning, we've also got virtual outplacement to support people moving out of current employments and into either self-employment or back into the workplace. And then we also have key partners like recruitment agencies, where we'll work with them to pass those people on once they're patched up, ready, upskilled, and wanting to go into a different direction. But it is just through adversity brings innovation. But part of that has to be planned. So taking that step back, looking at what you're currently doing and planning that way forward. So I'm quite happy to share, as I said, that the business model canvas for you guys to actually do that for yourself.
Thank you, Caroline. I think it's great advice. I think the key thing is the difference between working in the business and on the business, maintaining that perspective.
Absolutely.
Something that we can develop as we go through. So Steve Ettrill. Steve, would you mind going next?
Morning all. Yeah, I mean, the things I can put towards the seminar this morning is very much first-hand experience of what to relate the experience we've had in the last 4 months and the way that we've had to change our business model, perhaps to help others share the same, that are sharing the same pain with some of the lessons we've learned. Obviously, we as a business have a regularly sit down as an SMT and provide a 10-year business model, a 5-year business plan, etc. But in fact, the world turned on its head, as we all know, a few months ago, and now we're actually looking really, it's more about the next year ahead, even the 6 months ahead, and we're encouraged internally to talk about let's think outside the box. Let's go back to basics and saying what we essentially was our core purpose. And Hover Travel, obviously, we're a transport provider that provides, fortunately for the Isle of Wight here, a lifeline service. The business does have to exist. However, the normal business that we have with passengers dropped off a cliff. We were seeing less than 10% of our normal footfall per day. And so we had to sustain the business going forward, but also protecting the island community. We looked at funding streams that were out there. That wasn't readily available, but in the end, the government did help our industry, as it has helped other industries. So we had to look at different funding streams and investigate new stakeholders. I mean, out of everybody's problems we've had, there's another person's problems perhaps can be your gain. And I think one of the biggest successes we've had recently is actually going back to the basics. We pulled out times where our operating costs reduced right down to the minimum. And then we started to rebuild and expand on the new opportunities we saw. The Isle of Wight, as you know, we're a little bit remote, but not too far offshore. We still have a hospital here that needs to convey our patients to the mainland. One of the biggest successes we've had is identifying that actually, with the demise of the ferry services on the island, we ramped back initially to operating instead of every 30 minutes. We went back down to every hour at weekends, every 2 hours, and that was enough to support the needs of the travelling public at the time. But the car ferries, and so they ramped right back to every 2 or 3 hours. And then the hospitals came to us saying, well, hang on a minute, we've got to get patients rapidly transferred to the mainland. We use that in the helicopters at the moment. The helicopters are not available to us because of the COVID crisis. How are we going to do this? So we sat down with them and with our regulators and came up with a new way of moving patients on the hovercraft. And that was a big win very quickly for us, because it's opened a new market that it's not only going to be here through the COVID period, but it's going to be here for the future. So we went through, obviously, the business model surrounding that, the compliance that had to be gone through with our regulators and with the government, the health service, etc. So there's a lot of new challenges, a lot of new demands put on people. And I think the thing that's come through from my point of view and my work colleagues is that the flexibility, I think, as Thomas said, the adaptability of your business is very much down to your workforce. We have around 85 employees on a normal basis, and we're asking people who normally crew the hovercraft, for instance, to sell tickets. We're asking engineers who normally maintain the hovercraft to come and manage the ground operations. So there's a lot of diversification just in personal roles as against the business model. But we've been certainly looking at new income streams, new products that we can offer, and how we can leverage business. I mean, Thomas and Karen have always said really great things. The digitization, I'm sure, is key to everybody on this. The fact that we're talking as we are over Zoom is an indication of just how the world has flipped on its head. And we are now seeing a huge part of our business driven through media channels, and the sales streams are online. It's enabling us to reduce our staff headcount to a certain extent through the extension of the furlough scheme. Whilst business is not back to normal, we're able to sell a lot more tickets online. A lot more of our business is done online. I think that's a fairly common theme here, and it's going to be interesting to see where that goes in the future. But we are sitting down on a weekly basis, reviewing where we are in terms of health and safety, the business model changes, what we need to do to tweak it. We continually looking at we have in the marine industry and the aviation industry, as we would have in the business world, you have a business performance management tool. We have a safety management tool, but they're very similarly intricately linked. And it's all about looking at the output of the business in terms of safety. We look at incidents that might take place or near misses that might take place, and we learn off the back of that, and we close the loop by improving our training, possibly changing our the people in the numbers of people allocated to tasks, etc., etc. And it's very much the same way as the business model. It needs to be looked at almost, I think, on a very frequent basis at the moment. The government, for instance, are sending out new advice almost on a daily basis. It's now slowed down a little bit, but it's certainly going through the last 100 days. Every day we've had to look at the regulatory framework that we operate in. And with that comes a new challenge, but it also comes with a new opportunity. And I think that events such as this, networking, you're learning from other people's experiences, sharing their pain, sharing their gain. And I would encourage people to really not take their foot off the gas and keep looking to see what opportunities come out of every new regulatory change that comes our way.
Great, thank you, Steve. I think we'll probably come back and look at the sort of dynamics of how you engage your wider team in coming up with different perspectives and innovating in the midst of the storm. So we'll park that for a moment and ask Hugh. Hugh, would you mind? Over to you.
Not at all. Good morning, everyone. So I think there's a couple of things that really have come out for me. So having worked for an American corporation, which had about a $2.8 billion turnover and about £350 million we had in the UK, there was one thing it wasn't, which was agile. And for me, it's sort of agility and adaptability have really been the keys to both survival and success during this period. And I think for me, being a business leader at this time probably has been one of the most challenging times in my career. And I think there's been several things that have impacted on it. Firstly, when we tried to look at the adaptability, we went from where companies had transitioned to remote working, it was flicking a switch and doing it overnight. We then had colleagues who had challenges with childcare and so on, so actually getting them to work during the day and manage things was difficult. And then understanding some of the emotional issues people were going through where they were being locked down, particularly the ones I felt most sorry for were single employees. We had people who are living in one-bedroom flats and then can't get out and see everyone. So the whole management people came into a new place. I think then it's interesting when Caroline and Steve talked about business plans, because like everybody else, we've got the long-term business plans, and it was trying to make business judgments with 2 or 3 weeks window. So the government would shut something down and then say in 3 weeks' time, we get this clue, it might open up, and then it doesn't. So what we saw was a decline in business. And then when we reopened, our costs going vertical as we made sure that we got a COVID-safe environment. So for me, when we came to this adaptability, I think there were a couple of things that I've seen over the years that really came through. The first one was about product streams. When I worked for a big corporation, we had a number of different product streams, and we've got the same here at Peter with apprenticeships and commercial training. And actually having 2 different product streams actually gave a big lifeline, because what we saw was the balance of the 2 changing, which gave us enough income to be able to balance the books. I think the second thing that's we've had a big impact for us to look at is the customer base we've got, because for us, we have a strong customer base in engineering, which is driven off of the aerospace and the marine sector, which is very prevalent in the Portsmouth area. And if we then look at businesses that have thrived during this time, those have not been marine and aerospace. So we've had to make sure that we adapt with our customers. So for me, I think one of the things that's been the takeaway is making sure that you're representing different market segments and making sure that you've got more than one product range that you're out there to sell and supply. And then from those two, making sure that you can adapt quickly to service the market segments that are growing, because we've seen some areas that have done really well. And I don't want to be morbid here, but one of the ones that we have seen growth in is where we've supported undertakers, for example. But don't look at it as a negative. There are businesses that are doing well out of the COVID crisis, and they're the ones that have got the cash and the money to spend. And I think we should make sure that we focus, if you like, on the glass that is half full, and focus on those businesses that are doing well, and not get caught by the negative news in the media like today, with 720,000 people not working now, because there are good opportunities out there.
Great. Thank you. I think that resilience piece, as it relates to individuals and also to your business model, is absolutely key. We're going to return to that in the latter stages of the session. Steve Jones.
Yeah, hi. So one of the things I didn't mention in my introduction was I was invited up to London to Grant Thornton when they were running the Growth Accelerator program to run 6 workshops for them on growth. I did this for about 3 years. So you should truck up to Euston. We have 50 odd people in the room. We run a 3-hour workshop in the morning and in the afternoon. And those workshops now I'm going to run for the chamber. But I did this for about 2 or 3 years. But the point I'm making here is what I did, I sat back at the end of the project and I wrote a book called Turning on the Profits Tap around the experience of working with fast growth businesses. And I think it is right now very relevant because it's all about your mindset. It's about how you think about what you're doing, getting away. There's about 180 things that you have to do as a business owner, which becomes overwhelming when you think of all the things you need to do. So how do you step away from the content and think contextually around your business? So the steps that I put in place, there are only 7 steps you need to think about to really generate profit, are quite relevant now with COVID. And the first one, I think Thomas has already mentioned it, is purpose. Make sure you understand why you're doing what you're doing. The second one is relevance. Are you still relevant right now? Or is what you're doing obsolete, or do you have to adapt and change or be agile, like Hugh said? The third thing is, once you know your purpose and you know you're relevant, you still got to outclass the crowd. You still got to position yourself in the marketplace so you win the business. And if you're pivoting right now, you need to start thinking around your positioning. Has it changed, and do I need to look at it? And one of the ways is to ask your clients. But around positioning, if you think about my Fitness First days, the reason we were able to corner the market was because David Lloyd were charging a fortune and you had £3 pay and play at a local leisure centre, take your choice. We came in with 2 words, affordable fitness, and we cornered the market. So it's really about thinking about where's your niche, where's your position right now, and has it changed? The next thing is, once you've got your position clear, you're still the best kept secret until you go and find clients. So how do you go and find your clients? And when you found them and you're in a sales situation, how do you inspirationally run that sales meeting so people get excited about what you're doing? And then if you do all of that well, it's a case of managing your capacity and time well. How do you manage your time? What's your pinch point? Because that will stop your growth or your development also. So capacity and time management. And you've got to do all of this and serve your client. The last one, serve your client well. And if you do all of those things well, people will come back and buy your product again. They'll refer you all over town and they'll go for your 2nd, 3rd and 4th product. So it's just a very quick way of taking you out of the day-to-day and thinking contextually. Coming back to Caroline's point, if you think about the business canvas model, it's perfect right now for pivoting. If your organization's pivoting, the questions it asks are great, because who are your clients? Okay, have your clients changed? What is your value proposition? So is your value proposition changed, or is it the same? What's your channel to market? How do you go and find your clients? What sort of relationship do you have with your clients? Amazon don't have any relationship with clients, but they have a brilliant business model. Apple love their clients to bits. So what's your relationship with your clients, and what do you want your relationship to be? What key activities do you need to do on a day-to-day basis to make sure these things work? What key resources do you need to have? So, office, machinery, people. And who are your partners? Will your partners be different now? Who do you partner with going forwards? You may lose some partners, you may gain some partners. And these will be people like bank managers, accountants, lawyers, people that help you run your business, IT solutions, etc. And then critically, how do you generate your revenue right now and what are your costs? So the business canvas model, it also is a visual representation. So it's not linear. Your brain takes it in as a picture. And if you've got staff, you can engage staff with this process because they can see it very quickly, very easily. And you get away from the siloing in the business where people start to understand the complete business, not just their area of the business. So these are the kinds of things I think that companies should be looking at right now. And getting their head out of the day-to-day and thinking, right, well, what is our business? What's it going to look like? And how we're going to plan this and include our staff in the planning. Because one of the things I've noticed through COVID is it's the first time in history that a leader doesn't need to know the answers. And they don't know the answers. And I've seen a lot of decision-making being dispersed amongst staff and empowering staff. And I think that's the way forward. If you get your team to do these exercises together, you're probably going to get a collective thought that's much better than the leader trying to figure it out for themselves. So those are the kinds of things I think that people should be focusing on right now. Not the day-to-day, but thinking more contextually around how do I take my business forward. And that's my version of what I think I may be able to bring to today.
Steve,
yeah.
Just a quick question, if I may. So I'm frantically writing notes as everyone's talking. So I got, you said there were 7 steps there. So I got purpose, relevance, positioning, best kept secret, managing capacity and time, and then serve your client well. Have I missed, which one have I missed?
Yeah. So if you take the words profits, I'll put a word against each word of the profits. So it's purpose, first of all. Then it's relevant. Are you relevant? Then it's outclass the crowd, which is the positioning. Then it's go and find clients. So you've got your position sorted, but you still got to go and find clients. Then it's how do you have an inspirational sales process that brings them on and excites them about their journey with you. And then you'll have the challenge of managing your time, so capacity and time. And then you've got to deliver a great service so they come back and buy more. And if you can do all of those things, have a tick against those, you'll be okay. If you've got any neutral or crosses against those, there's your pinch point, and that's why your business isn't cash rich.
Brilliant, thank you.
That's great, thank you, Emma. You're on next, actually, Emma, so you can pick up on point 4 of that.
Indeed. Yes, so what I thought I'd talk about today was how, so I do a lot of research into marketing. I live, eat, sleep, breathe this stuff. So I've been doing a lot of research at the moment around how people act in a crisis, how people's psychology changes when we're in recession or times of crisis. So I'm looking at sort of the marketing successes and failures of companies as they've navigated those economic downturns. And I've done this from sort of the 1970s onwards. And what's really fascinating is actually there are so many trends and patterns that you can see in customer behaviour. So what I think would be quite a useful thing to do when you're thinking about your products and services, what you have to realise is that your customer is now categorising those slightly differently. So if you think for a second about the products and services that you offer, think about which category it falls into, and there are 4 of them. So there's essentials, so is it necessary for survival or central to well-being? You've got treats, which are justifiable indulgences. You have postponables, so they're needed or desired, but the purchase can be put off. So I put the washing machine into that category, for example. And then you have luxuries. So those are things that potentially in crisis become unnecessary or unjustifiable for people. And what you find in all this research is that there are, when you're looking at your buyer, when you're thinking about your perfect buyer, you usually come up with some form of profile. So it's usually got some demographics in there. You find out where people get their information from, and you create sort of a profile that you then use in your marketing when you're doing your communications. But what you find during crisis is that actually all the demographics kind of don't seem to mean as much anymore. And what you find is that you have a psychological state of being that you need to really consider in your communications. So there are 4 types of psychological mindset, I suppose, that your clients will be falling into. So you'll have the slam on the breakers, and they're feeling the most vulnerable and hardest hit financially right now. They're reducing all types of spending. And what's quite interesting is actually, although most people in that group are low income, what you find is many anxious high income consumers start fitting that bracket as well. So that's something to think about. You have the pained but patient consumer. So they tend to be relatively resilient, they're optimistic about the long term, but they're less confident about the short term recovery. And so they're economising in all areas of their life, but less aggressively than the slam on the breakers. They're not really affected by unemployment. Wide range of income levels sort of sit in that bracket. But if news continues to get worse, the pained but patient will turn into slam on the breakers. So you need to be aware of that. Two more. So we have comfortably well off. So they're pretty confident they're going to be able to ride out the current and any future problems in the economy. They're consuming at nearly the same levels as they did before the crisis, but they're being a bit more selective about their purchases. They're usually in the top 5% of income brackets, but they also include people who are less wealthy, but feel pretty confident with their finances. So the comfortably retired often fit into that group. And then you have the live for todayers, and they're just carrying on as usual. They're a little bit bored, they're a little bit more annoyed than usual, but they're generally unconcerned about savings, and they've just responded by extending their timetables for those major purchases. They're the ones with the most disposable income right now, because they're usually spending money on experiences rather than stuff, apart from expensive electronics. And so those are the four types of consumer, the four psychological mindsets to be aware of. And then, as I said, what they're doing is putting your products and services into those four categories of essentials, treats, postponables, and luxuries. So what I've done, if I just drop that down there for a second, I'm just going to share my screen if I may. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to amari.co.uk, resources, articles. Let's hope this works. Doing it live and not having the best of internet connections. So what I've done is I've just written a resource on this. So a lot of what I've just said is on here. You can go and read it in your own time. I'm just giving you the summary. This explains in more detail the different types of consumer, and then explains all the different ways in which they will look at products and how their mindset will be changing. And then this is the bit that I really think is useful for today. So this is positioning for recovery. So I totally agree with everything that's been said before. And the best time to market is often in a downturn, because fewer people are doing it, so you can capture more attention, which is great. And then what I've done here, so you can see, once you've put your product or service into the different category, and worked out which psychological mindset best fits your current customer, then what I've done is just put in, based on, as I said, on all the research that I've seen over the last few decades, I've just put in a few ideas around tactics that you can use to help with your marketing. And this is the sort of stuff I'm doing with my clients all the time at the moment. So yeah, you can go and have a look at this in your own time, but I think that's a really useful thing. The other thing I would say is that you would be amazed at the amount of successful businesses that have launched during economic downturns and crises, and how well they've done. And certainly I'm finding as a marketing agency, we're doing, normally I work with larger businesses that have started stagnating, who want to use social media more effectively to sort of sell their wares. But what I'm finding at the moment is actually I'm getting an awful lot of startups coming. People that have been made unemployed and are finally starting that business that they've always thought about. And you always have a whisper in the back of your mind, I could just do that if I had time, money, etc. So that's what we're seeing a lot of at the moment, which is great news. And again, lots of resources on that on the website. Ever since I started the business 3 years ago, I've journaled my entire experience. So anytime I found anything useful or said something more than 3 times, I've written a blog on it. So yeah, that's all there for you. I'll pop the link into the chat for you as well, just so you've got it. And that's me.
Great, Emma. That's brilliant as ever. So those that are on the call, I know we've given you a broad perspective of our panel. I'd be really keen for you to engage them directly with your questions. So please, if you want to do that, just open up your mic and away you go. Lots of themes started by Thomas. You know, your 3 areas of having that core purpose. Emma's just picked up the point about what problem you're trying to solve for each of those customers, and diversifying your range of services. There's a lot in there, isn't there? Let's explore this business canvas resource, Caroline and Steve. I know you put a link, and there's a YouTube link Steve's put up there.
Yeah.
How might the business canvas help those that are, well, anyone really, at any stage of business?
I think there's 2 things, isn't there, Steve? I mean, I would say, one, because it's visual, because it just strips down the whole, every area of your business, from your partners through to your customers, through to your internal resource, external resource, and the fact, I mean, Steve and I probably do differently, but we also do some things the same. I use post-it notes, and especially if you do it with a brainstorming session with your team. So if you're an existing business and you're establishing, then I would always use the team, and sometimes what they see as a resource, you haven't already thought of. So,
yeah.
I would back that up, and I think right now where organisations are having to re-look at what they're doing, this could be a new project. So Emma mentioned all these startups. Well, this is a perfect tool for startups, because actually it can be done for a project, an area of business, or the whole business, and it's really quite a powerful tool in just getting you to think about the bigger picture and how everything joins up. And when you do this with teams, they tend to, if you go into organisations, do this with teams, with departments, they tend to look at their own department. They don't look at the bigger picture. When you do a canvas with a leadership team that's been pulled together from different areas of the business, they suddenly understand the bigger picture rather than just their siloed area. And then if you think about employee engagement going forwards, if you bring a person into an organisation, you could have this on your wall, and your receptionist could go over whilst someone's waiting and explain the whole business to that person in one canvas very, very easily. So it's a tool for uniting staff and understanding the common cause of the organisation rather than just thinking of their particular role. So it has a lot of variety, a lot of uses.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that sort of holistic understanding of the whole, how it all fits together.
Yeah,
is absolutely key. We've got a couple of questions on any advice on licensing, mentoring, licensing a new product, and also on patents and IP. Anyone on the panel, any suggestions about how, Joe, that's your question, Joe, isn't it? Would you like to address the panel directly? Joe?
I saw that earlier, and there are actual other panelists that have come from, that are on this with us today, because I had a little look at our delegate list, and there are some specialists already in the room that work on that actual consultation of IP and developing products. And I would have to go through that delegate list again to get you the right name, but I will do, and I can happily share that with the team.
If any of the panelists or guests can help Joe, then please unmute yourself and speak in open forum. If not, we can send you some information, Joe, post.
Thank you.
What about patents and IP? That was the question that came in as well. Who mentioned that? Where are we?
So I think that was Joe as well, wasn't it, on product licensing?
Okay, great. One and the same. I think what we're going to do in about 2 or 3 minutes' time, we're going to put you in some breakout rooms, and then you can engage each of the panelists directly. But I'm sure you've got some questions, burning questions you'd like to ask before we go into the breakout. So I encourage you to unmute yourself and speak direct to us with your question.
Rob, there's a question from Lee around, we touched on keeping and attracting talent. I am supporting young people. So you're just making sure people are aware that he does that.
You want to take that one, Steve?
Yeah, well, basically, if you're, let's have a look at it. Yeah, I got my eyes to work first. We touched on keeping and attracting talent and supporting young people. What are people's views on inspiring the next generation and finding a pathway to employment or taking the Yeah, well, I think right now, the youngsters, if they think outside the box a little bit, there's lots of opportunities. Personally, one of the things that Caroline and I do together is I map people's motivations. I work out what motivates and drives individuals so that we can work out the best way forward for that individual. Because in our day, typically we were pigeonholed in by our parents into going into something that was safe and eventually would pop out later and do what we wanted to do. So what you're trying to avoid with youngsters is making sure they don't go down that avenue of being told what to do by their parents, but more finding their own path. So one of the things that you can do is find out what drives and motivates them. And when you find out what drives and motivates them, it's quite clear then what they need to look for. So it avoids that escape of being put into a job you don't want to be in because of peer pressure.
Yeah, I think
if I could just add to that as well. So I've been doing quite a lot of work on this with some of the mentees that I have, which I can send over to you, Lee. But one of the best ways that I've seen young people really take care of their career proactively is actually using LinkedIn, and using LinkedIn really effectively to start building and developing those relationships, asking subject matter experts more about their industry. And what you find is that because people have a bit more time at the moment, because we're not traveling as much and all the rest of it, and people are a lot more happy to share their knowledge and to just give people hints and tips on stuff. So as I said, I've been doing some practical exercises with a few of my mentees, so I'll send that blog over to you.
We've had another question coming actually about standing out in a crowded market, especially on social and online. So what would your advice be on standing out in the online world?
Yeah, I'll take that one again if you want. Basically, there's 4 things you've got to think at: product, market, service, price. So what is your product? What is your market? What is your service? What is your price? So what Fitness First would do, they had a product. So we had to work out, was it high-end, neutral, low, that product? So it was mid-range product. So what they decided was if they wanted to compete with David Lloyd, they had to actually have air-conditioned gyms, oakwood lockers, hot showers that worked. So they worked hard on making sure they covered that off in an affordable way. So that was their product. Their market, they decided, was a bit like any of the cheap airlines. It's anybody who could afford them. So what they worked out was if they came in at £30, they could attract the people who were paying £3 pay and play in a local leisure centre, so they could attract those. But also the David Lloyd people who were paying £50, £60, £70 started to scratch their heads and wonder why, when they could get pretty much the same for 30 quid. And that's how we cornered the market. So that's the product, the market. The service levels, you have to decide on your service levels. If you look at airlines, British Airways have to provide a high level of service because of their costs, but actually Flybe, you get a bucket seat from A to B and take your chance. So that's their service levels, and price is reflected. So when British Airways tried to compete with the cheap airlines, they brought out Go, and Go didn't work because they had such a strong position on price being expensive. So you have to be very clear: what is your market, what is your product, what is your service, and what is your price, and start to think about how you position yourself around those.
Emma, I know.
I have resources on this. So I think for me, when I first started out in as Amari, I really struggled with all of it, because I was such a generalist, and my experience sort of I could do so many different things. I became a bit of a chameleon. So one of the things that I did when I first started to really help me understand what I wanted to do, and going back to Steve's point around motivations, was asking different questions, because I find with a lot of these branding surveys and things, they're all the same questions, and I really struggle with the great questions, you know, like what do you stand for, what do you do best, etc. You know, why would people choose you over someone else? But I just found them particularly difficult to answer. And so I went a slightly different way, and I just got really angry, and I decided to write a whole load of, I just basically got a white piece of paper and wrote down everything I hated about the marketing industry, and I just ripped it a new one basically. And then from that, that then helped me to, I sort of inverted that anger into you know, I got a real sense of what it was that I hated about my industry, and therefore what I wanted to change. And that was how I really sort of developed, you know, my messaging and how I stand out. The other thing I would say is that a lot of companies measure finance, and they measure their talent, and they measure their inventory, but what they don't measure is their social capital. And so especially now, like, building and developing relationships is just so crucial. So the one way that the one thing I do religiously every day is the coffee cup routine. And I know a couple of people in the chat know and love this as well, which is great. But so it's basically 6 actions that I take every day on social media that help me to build and develop those relationships. And then I find, as long as I'm adding value to that community, you know, there's a lot of intelligence, skill, support, access to things and people that I wouldn't otherwise be able to get, especially as a startup when, you know, money is really tight. So the 6 things that I do every day, so I network, so I go on LinkedIn, I send, I accept and I reject connection requests. I've got a really clear idea of who I want to talk to. I check and reply to my messages. I look at my notifications, because that gives me opportunities to engage with people in my network and add value to the conversations that they're having. I look at my home feed and I engage with a couple of posts that are relevant to either my industry or the things that I'm thinking about at the time. I share an article or update. Sometimes they're mine, sometimes they're things that I've seen that I think are quite important. And then I just check my profile and look at the groups that I'm part of. So again, what we're finding with social media is it's less about using it as a sort of digital soapbox and just sort of broadcasting into the abyss. And it's much more about those sort of groups, those chats with fewer people, but developing and building those relationships. And that's how, you know, so we hit 6 figures in turnover in 15 months. And I did that without a website, because I just did everything through social media. So if there's one thing that I would say about standing out from the crowd, it's just give generously your knowledge, your access to, you know, your networks. One of my mentors at BP, the first thing she ever said to me was, your network is your net worth. And that has always stuck with me. And the other thing I would say, and I'm not doing a very good job of it now, is when you're on social media, remember, a wealth of information drives a poverty of attention. So be bold, be brief, be gone. Keep it short, keep it snappy, and keep people coming back for more. And that's what I've found. So hopefully that helps. And again, it's all on the website. So if you go down to blogs and look at social media and the categories, all of this stuff is on there, so you can go and have a look at it in your own time as well.
Brilliant, Emma. Thank you very much. Steve, just a brief one, then we're going to put people into breakout. So, Steve.
Yeah, just a very quick point. Just I wanted to pick up on Lee made a question earlier about the younger generation or opportunities. Just something that I'd like to throw into the arena is that you look at the aviation industry, you look at the marine industry. They are somewhat cyclical. Boom bust in the aviation industry is typical for those who have lived through 2001, 2008. The thing that we're going through at the moment, which a lot of people are losing their jobs, a lot of people have been made redundant, particularly the people we see, for instance, at British Airways. Many of those we lost because they will retire, they will move on, take early retirement, so go off and do their own things. It leaves a big gap for the young generation. And as much as they might be a little bit down at the moment, thinking where are the opportunities, I think just bear with it, guys. There is going to be a huge opportunity out there for you in the future, because if those 2 industries are typical of the norm, there are going to be voids to fill, and there will be very quick promotions off the back of that. We've seen it in both industries, very quick progress from younger, new entrants to senior roles very quickly off the back of situations that we're currently facing. And this is unprecedented in its depth with the pandemic. greater than the recessions we've had in the past, and I think there's going to be some superb opportunities for the youngsters in the future.
Great.
Rob,
Thank you, Steve.
sorry, Rob, one real, just very quick one sentence from me on that point. Go and contact your local colleges. You'll be amazed what the colleges have got available, the platforms, the programs they've got. Engage with the young people. They'll give you some student voice, but they're also obviously workforce of the future. So they could be the answer to a lot of the questions that have come up through this.
Yes, thank you, Thomas. That's a really good point. We're now going to put you into your breakouts. You're going to be partnered up, panelists, and within that 10 to 15 minutes that you're going to be in the breakouts, for those that join each panelist, I'd really like you to get as much out of that session as you possibly can, because when you come back in, I'm going to be asking you to share some of the insights that you pulled from the breakout. So let's make the most of the experience that you've got in each room. Bob, I'm going to ask you to put people into their breakouts, and we'll see you in 15 minutes from now. Over to you, Bob.
Very multinational groups are based in New Zealand to local SMEs. But about a year ago, we set up something for all of us. Thanks. And I kind of become like a child and gone, I don't want to do that. So I've got to find a way to put what I do, get the same energy, excitement to the online world. Otherwise, I won't take it. So that's sort of where I'm at.
Yeah,
we're developing to prototype stage, and we're trying to keep our costs as low as possible if we can, so we can take this forward. I know that the securing IP, particularly for worldwide, is going to be tremendously expensive. Trying to get the products to market by manufacturing ourselves, we've been told the cost $40 million. So that's some money that we haven't really got. So we're facing big challenges really. So that's why we're wondering about last.
Yeah. You have experience in this field. I never see corporate life, but work for the American corporation, we put about 4% of our turnover back into R&D, and set R&D departments. Yeah, it's just gone through my mind. I'm just wondering if you've got any contacts, those who are who might be working freelance now. Selling is bespoke services. That's where the innovation bit, that's the bit that gets me already on take. I wonder if you could do it in a pub, so business there.
It's all of that. It's just finding them target markets that will be interested in that. So I don't know. I mean, God, I don't even know anything about you, really. I found out from the cinema today. Quite exciting. Even though I've lived here for 6 years, I spent 200 days going away. And so consequently, just learning about my medical. But the reason Hi there, Sam Richard. Hi Sam. I'm a first session as well. Hiya. And also, I tuned into your other session as well, which was really useful. I'm just starting up as a VA. I've done freelance work in the past, but for the last 10 years I've been in permanent employment, which has been a very interesting ride of redundancies and all that kind of stuff.
Sorry there, Rob. I didn't mean to click. I disappeared from the room.
I wonder where you've gone, Tiana. No, it's all right. I think we're waiting for everyone to.
We're back in the room.
Yeah, I kind of missed the end of what you were saying.
Oh, but just say, yeah, so sorry, just talking quickly about the canvas again, just it's very visual. It helps create, creativity. Using post-it notes gives you that flexibility. It's not a form. You think about business plans, it becomes so rigid.
Yeah.
And that this isn't. This is free flow, but it all joins the whole part of the business, everything external and internal together. So it just,
brilliant. Thanks very much.
No problem.
Thank you.
Great. Well, some good discussions in our session. Shall we have a quick summary? I think Caroline, you obviously talked about the business, the canvas, and we've got links to that, haven't we, in the chat?
Yeah, I will also be sending. I'll send a blank form, so PDF, so people can enlarge it and print it out and then use and play with it. And both Steve and I have said, look, guys, if you want any help, if you want to bounce some information off of, ask any questions, then please do.
Great, thanks, Caroline. Thomas, what were the main discussions from your session?
So I think from ours, it was a lot around needing to find a different way to attract the audiences. So I know that sort of Tracy and Diane both were working in the charity sector, and obviously traditional methodology there is going to be challenging, especially when it comes to fundraising, so finding different ways to be able to do that. And Jane was saying about she has come from an international marketplace that is now completely dried up naturally due to the consultancy, not being able to do the consultancy in the same way it's been done before. So I think the thread around agility became the key thing from our perspective, and how can these guys attract the different marketplaces. I think it was Alan as well, who's got a publishing company, as in hardback company. How do we reach new audiences when you can't do things in the same way? So, and the answer was basically Emma.
You just need Emma.
Just need it. Everyone
just need Emma.
They're going to be in demand, Emma.
Yeah, looks like it. But I have offered, so Amari does 8 hours of free consulting for charities. So I have offered that to the 2 charities that are in the call already.
Brilliant. No, Thomas, your organisation has so much to give people on this call. It seems a bit of a crime that we've only got, a few minutes to give you the sort of breadth and depth of how people can work with your organisation. So if you had to summarise it in 2 or 3 things, what would you be able to, what can people?
I think listening to it, we've said agility and adaptability and innovation are the key themes to being able to do this. And that's trying to future-proof the businesses. The pitch I would make around the organisation is actually the talent pool that we have, and to come in and use the resort. And not just Portsmouth College, but any college. People are based in different areas, and we've got 1,500, for example, in Portsmouth College, 1,500 16 to 18-year-olds that are going to be shaping the future of the economy, and do have ideas and do look at things differently to your normal approaches. And what we said all the way through this is be adaptable, be agile, be innovative. Well, students aren't bound by the usual restrictions that we all are, which come with experience. So they will allow you to think differently from that perspective and build your curriculums. And there are many ways that you could engage with students. So that could be through a work experience placement. We can put on focus groups through our life curriculum program. We've got apprenticeships. We've got, Peter have got apprenticeships. They've talked about it earlier, the different consultancies. So you can come in and do insight talks with our students, which are fantastic and would really help us from that side. So I think the best thing to do is I'll pop my email on there, and anyone who feels that Portsmouth College or any of the other, if we can help in that way and engage with us, drop me an email and hit me with the challenges that you've got, and I'll dovetail that with how I think not just the student population, but the college itself can help. We could maybe give you use of our facilities for conferencing, for example. There are many, many different ways that we can do it, but that's probably my takeaways. I'll pop my email in the chat. Please do drop me a line if we're your local provider, or drop me a line if we're not, and I'll connect you with the local college that's near to you.
That's great, Thomas. I think that for the first time, we look to the next generation for how to run your business, and the more we can reach out across that diverse range of sectors. So our conversation was looking at licensing and IP and licensing models, and I'm sure there's some bright young things that you represent that could help, not just help with crafting those ideas and future-proofing them, and perhaps even working with a fledgling new startup to support their early stages of growth.
Definitely. Anyone that wants to sit in front of a group of 30, 17-year-old economics students, I can connect you with that. But we do actually we've got a Young Innovators Hub here, which is a dedicated space for startup student businesses. So anything that people can give back would be great for those students as well.
I think that the more I get into the amount of resources that we've got locally, the more inspired you get. We've got it all on our doorstep. It's just having the right people to approach to access it. It's fantastic.
Rob, can I just also say there is a project that's running right the way across the Solent area that allows for funded training, which means it's free to SMEs. So and that's the CSW group. It's supported by the LEP, Solent LEP. So that's another resource that I just think is available that probably people don't know about.
Great, no, that's really good, Karen. You put that on the chat. Superb. So let's turn to who should we turn to next? Emma, were you in the same group as Thomas? Yeah. In our group, we talked about the power of networking, and Tiona led the conversation about how to reach out to your extended network and building a network, whether it be locally or via social media. And we had a conversation about using social media to perhaps stalking's the wrong word, but politely following characters that might be able to share lessons from a parallel market with you, and go with the sentiment of I don't like your term, Emma, about just giving stuff for free, and that creating that virtuous circle of people wanting to help you with your business idea, but you've got to take some risks, personal risks, in order to be able to do that. Any other points from the breakout groups that we can talk about? I know that Darren from our sessions got a point I'll raise in a second, but any other points from the sessions that you think relevant?
We did come across about one of the things that we started to look at was actually about so many businesses have lots and lots of different products, but it's about being focused in your communication to your customers. First of all, listening to what your customer wants to match your products and services, but two, to be, when you're entering into the market, which obviously Emma can tell you about standing on her head here, is about actually being focused with your message rather than complete blanket of everything that you can do. So
yeah. Great, thanks, Caroline. Sam, you've got a question. I know that. I think that's probably one for Thomas, talking about how to access the apprentice scheme. We've had 5 apprentices over the years, and they've all been fantastic. But Thomas would be your go-to person for more information on that, and his information email, Thomas, will be on the chat.
Yeah, I've dropped my email on the chat, so please do drop me a line, and then I'll advise however I can and connect you to the appropriate training provider if we don't offer it ourselves here.
Great, thanks, Thomas. And Darren, your point about agility and adaptability, different actions that different firms are taking to exploit the potential benefits and risks and new ways and places of working. That's quite an interesting question. Darren, did you want to address the panel directly? We've got a few more minutes.
Yes, happy to do so. I will add I'm a bit of an interloper. I'm actually a civil servant, so I apologise for joining in on this. Essentially, there's been a lot of talk recently regarding the opportunities of COVID-19 and I suppose the realization that we can deliver a lot of what we do remotely, a lot of what we do in the dispersed collaborative virtual environments instead of, I suppose, office-based environments using old sort of face-to-face methods. We're looking at how we can exploit this, and I wondered whether there were similar lessons and thinkings from yourselves, or whether that's something you've already done pre-COVID maybe, or whether you consider a lot of it just hype or exaggerated. So any thoughts and guidance you might have, I'd be really, really interested in. So.
Okay, thank you, Darren. It's a great question. One eye on the time. Who would like to, from the panel, or anyone really, like to comment on Darren's point?
I could say something about that, if that's okay.
Good, Joe, yeah.
Yeah, we've got 4 or 5 businesses that obviously when lockdown went into effect, we work from home. And we've actually taken this opportunity to really diversify our offering, really, in terms of how we work. We've really digitized. We've got our clients using digital forms. So we've taken full advantage, actually. I think our business has improved because of it. The way we can work now, pre-lockdown, post-lockdown, during lockdown, it's really improved. So I would recommend embracing it where possible. If you can work from home, if you can adapt your business to, include better systems or improve your systems, or get a system, however you need to adapt to the current circumstance, then embrace it and take it as an opportunity.
So what's your business, Joe?
So we've got several under our wing, from financial services to software development to business support. So, I mean, you guys are doing a really great job of the mentoring side of it. And what we're trying to do is sort of assist that with a package that bolts on as kind of the administration to your business, whether it be accounting, payroll, HR, system support, teaching people about Microsoft 365. What do you get with 365? You get loads, but no one knows that. And I'm trying to get people using it, SharePoint, Teams, Planner, loads of things that people aren't aware of. So yeah, that's an overview of what we're doing, and we've really embraced the digital world in the last few months.
Great, thank you, Joe. I'm just conscious of people's diaries. We've gone slightly over time. I'd just like to thank you all for coming. We have another one in a couple of weeks' time. Never long enough. There's lots of links on chat you can tap into. All our email addresses are there, so please get in touch. I'd like to say thank you to all of our panelists. Enjoyed every.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Input.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And let's keep the conversation going. Come back and get in touch with us. See you in a couple of weeks' time. The recording will be available as will the chat function. So bring a friend next time, and let's have an even better conversation. Thank you all once again, and have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Tom?
Yeah.
Tom. Really keen to link in with you on. We're trying to get a team, a young team together for mission.
Okay.
That represent not just the sort of media, social media side of life, but other aspects too: logistics, operations, support for finance. Not build a young team to help us, help them and help us, a sort of mutually beneficial relationship. I don't know what form that might take, but I'd be keen to pick your brains on how we might do that.
Yeah, sure. Where are you guys based at Mission?
We're Fareham, Daedalus Park, so not that far away from you. We have a history of working with apprentices. We'd probably want an element of some a little bit more experience than pure apprentices, but a way of a way of working with your young people to help us grow the business, and for them to gain valuable experience of working with a global business.
I think probably the best starting point, if you guys just list for me what you'd really like it to be, so it's the types of things